News Conference with Conan Nolan, Southern California's longest-running public affairs program.
On this edition of News Conference, how is it that California, which was a leader in the fight against the COVID-19 outbreak, became an epicenter for its transmission? Is it that the state ignored the way people behave and used up its reservoir of faith with its citizens? And did eliminating outdoor dining make the transmission worse? Yes, says one leading contrarian to state policy. We talk with Dr. Monica Gandhi of the University of California at San Francisco. LA's new district attorney is being sued by his own prosecutors who claim George Gascon is demanding deputy DAs violate the law. But isn't it the job of the new DA to set policy when it comes to prosecutions? We talk with Michelle Hannessy, president of the Association of LA County Deputy District Attorneys. Representative Karen Bass gives her assessment on the congressional priorities with Democrats in charge in both houses of Congress, and historian Michael Beschloss on how we haven't seen this much action this quickly from a new president since FDR's inauguration in 1933. Welcome to the Tom Brokaw News Center here at Universal City. I'm Conan Nolan. We hope you are well. Joining us first from Washington is Congresswoman Karen Bass, whose district represents parts of South Los Angeles, all of Culver City. She's a member of the House Judiciary Committee as well as House Foreign Affairs. So, Congresswoman, thanks for taking the time. A new Congress has been sworn in. Republicans have picked up some seats, and now you have a much narrower Democratic majority. How's that going to change things?
Oh, I do think it'll change things. I'm not sure if it will immediately, but I'm sure throughout these next 2 years, there will be votes that will be close. But number one on our agenda absolutely has to be COVID and getting a real substantial relief package to Los Angeles throughout the country ASAP.
What do you say to those who point out, Republicans, that, hey, we just had $900 billion in COVID relief last month. Let's see how that works out first.
Oh, my gosh. Well, first of all, we need a national strategy that we have not had. And we just learned there was no plan for vaccine distribution in place. And so those two items alone require us to have far more stimulus. And then the jobs report came out. So I don't know how much time you need to pass to recognize that we have two crises going on, one a health and the other economic, and you can't deal with the economic until you deal with the health. We didn't provide any money for state and local government in the last bill. So we absolutely have to have another one that is more substantial.
But what about splitting that up, passing the vaccination funding first, then debating the other stuff in a separate bill later?
Well, no, I mean, I really don't think there's a whole lot to debate about the jobs program today. And I don't think there's a lot to debate about the fact that state and local government didn't receive resources. You know, I'm so appreciative of California and the leadership that we have, one in Sacramento and two in Los Angeles, and we're still struggling. So it shows that we need massive more support. But the number one thing we got, and that's new leadership. And I know that President Biden and Vice President Harris will be rolling out a national strategy. And that is what we have lacked from the beginning of this pandemic, national leadership.
And tell us, how tense is the relationship now between your party and the Republican caucus? We saw some bipartisanship at the inauguration, but we know that normally dissipates quickly.
What I am hoping is that the real extremist element of the caucus, especially some of the new members, the members that are in QAnon or whatever it's called, for example, or, you know, members who insist on bringing guns onto the floor where we vote, where there's absolutely no reason for that. I am hoping that that element becomes isolated and some of the more moderate voices begin to speak up. That's what I'm hoping to see. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to work together in a bipartisan basis. We have got to do a reset to our government. But I do have to tell you a warning that I heard from several of my Republican colleagues who now are saying that they're worried about there might be personal threats to their safety if they deviate from Trump's agenda. Hopefully, with him off the world stage for at least a while, maybe they will be able to have some breathing room. I also think that some of the right-wing element that was involved in the unrest that happened a couple of weeks ago are in disarray now because they were sold a lie that there was a way that Trump was going to come back and overturn the election, and now they don't know what to do. So hopefully with that, we will have a reset within the Republican Party, which will allow for us to have a reset within the government.
Congresswoman Karen Bass of Los Angeles, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, there is new leadership in Washington, and Joe Biden has wasted no time in making his mark. Michael Beschloss is a highly respected presidential historian who views events like last week's inauguration through a much different prism than the rest of us. So, Mr. Beschloss, administrations normally don't start like this one unless you're Franklin Roosevelt and got elected because of the Depression.
A perfect historical parallel, not surprisingly. Roosevelt came in 1933, Great Depression, but also had to deal with a lot of other problems at once, including the closing of the banks. And it's very much on the par with that Joe Biden has to deal with a pandemic, the economy, a crisis of racial injustice that's gone on for 4 centuries, climate change. None of these things can he afford to just say, well, maybe I'll deal with it if I'm reelected to a second term. He's got to do it all now.
So communication is fundamental to leadership. President Trump saw himself as the chief marketer for everything in the administration, with the tweets, the COVID news conferences, even insisting his name be on relief checks. I suspect you believe this administration is going to be different.
Well, Donald Trump said, as you remember, in his first acceptance speech in 2016 in Cleveland, I alone can fix it. Can you imagine Joe Biden in a million years saying something like that? Everything we've seen about his appointments in recent weeks shows that over almost 50 years, this is a guy who knows that he only succeeds if he has great people around him and gives them credit.
But I heard, David Axelrod recently said that they overexposed President Obama at the start of his administration, that it became prosaic and that that was a mistake.
No, that's exactly right. And Ronald Reagan knew that very well. He was once offered a national TV appearance 5 times a week before he became president, and he said no because he thought he would get overexposed, people would get tired of him, they'd stop listening to him, and I think Joe Biden understands that extremely well. Better to have a strong team with him at the head.
How remarkable was it that the President of the United States in his inaugural address asked fellow Americans to simply believe objective truth?
Whoever imagined in our beloved country that we would have had a president giving a speech saying, I appeal to you to understand facts as they are, not as someone distorts them. Whoever would have expected that a president would say something like, democracy has prevailed. What it prevailed over was not a foreign enemy, as it did in World War II and World War I and World War II, but over domestic terrorists who try to take down our system. So Joe Biden is dealing with things that we have never seen before.
Presidential historian Michael Beschloss, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.